All right, all right, all right. Welcome back to another episode of The Inspired Show.
Yes, welcome in. We're excited to have you. We have so many good things to talk about.
Yeah, thank God you made it back and you felt inspired enough.
Well, you know, me, I'm constant inspired all the time.
Yeah, so much. That's right. You even changed your Instagram handle to Joe Inspired.
Joe Cohen Inspires, that's right.
Yeah,
For
that's
those of you who don't follow me on Instagram, Joe Cohen Inspires. Make it really easy for you to find me.
Right. And me at Jorge Perez, Jr. Junior. Yeah, JR. So let's talk about entrepreneurship. That's kind of how we met. And we'll go into the story of that in just a little bit. But yeah, what is being an entrepreneur for you, Joe?
Being an entrepreneur for me personally I think it's all about risk taking, right? Not a lot of people are risk takers in this world. Something that kind of resonated with me in my lifetime was a book that was written by Robert T. Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Mm-hmm. And he said it very well about how we're kind of raised to be consumer minded, right? Yeah. Go to school, go to college, get a job, pay for material things, get married, all of that kind of stuff like that. But, you know, as an entrepreneur, you are not cut from that same cloth. And I don't think I've ever really been cut from that consumer-minded cloth. We talked about it in the past about our independence, and from a very young age, I always knew that some people asked me what I wanted to be in my life, and I wanted to be a businessman. I wanted to be in business. However that looked like, I didn't know at the time, but from a very young age, I knew I wanted to be in business. What about you?
No, well, it's interesting. Well, I love personal development, which I think that's slated to one of our next topics. But I definitely read Robert Kiyosaki's book when I was in my early 20s in New York. And I remember he had a game called The Rat Race. Mm-hmm. No, Cash Flow, sorry. And the whole point of Cash Flow was to get out of the rat race.
Right.
And it's such a good game because kind of like Monopoly, where you learn kind of the basics of like rental, owning and stuff.
Yep.
And I remember that I read his book, and I think subconsciously kind of it went into my psyche because I had a fear of getting a job, right? I had a fear of like having a boss. And I think that I always gravitated to, again, back to that independence that I always craved and wanted. But in 2008, with the kind of crash of the market, I had saved some money. And I remember that I wanted to buy a house for me to live in, and my real estate agent, who's not my property manager, was like, you don't have enough money to buy something in Hollywood, West Hollywood, but you could buy a great foreclosure in the Echo Park area, which was very up and coming, and now is even, now it came. Yeah. So he was like, listen, you can buy it, it'll be $300,000, and then you can rent it and be about $1,500 cash flow positive, just like that.
Amazing.
And I was like, done.
Yeah.
So I did it in 2008, and I stopped, and I should have kept going. Sure. But now, now I picked it back up this last year. This 2 years ago, where we're doing more real estate stuff together. But I think Robert's teachings and that mentality of like, it's okay to have debt. Yeah. There's good debt. Nothing wrong with that. I think it's so it goes really anti the American core of how we're raised, like what we're told in school, where our parents are always telling us not to have debt, when in reality, like, we can leverage off debt.
Well, Dave Ramsey's whole, business is made off of getting people out of debt, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, we are using debt to our advantage.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, like you said, it's good debt.
Yeah.
We're using it to create a cycle for ourselves. Yeah. And so, I think too, personally for me, I saw my parents, and, my mom worked 3 jobs. My dad worked the same job, but it was a very, minimalistic job. It was, cookie cutter. He was there for 27 years. And then when they went out of business, he was lost. He didn't know what direction he wanted to take. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, you work for a place for 27 years, and then they go out of business, and you're just left with nothing else except for a pension or a retirement that you can't collect until you're 65. And so he virtually had to start over in his 40s.
Yeah.
And I just saw that, and I was like, I just really never wanted that for myself. So I kind of became a job hopper, so to speak. And so it never, I would never stay at a job for more than a year.
Yeah.
It was like changing jobs like I was changing my T-shirt.
Yeah.
And so I think I was just always trying to find myself and go towards that entrepreneurship. And it wasn't until in my early 20s that I found that in real estate. You know, I became an independent contractor for a real estate company, and I really found my niche. I found exactly where I wanted to be. And so I started, you know, looking into different ways of being a business owner. Now, I had no idea what I was doing. But I'll tell you right now, I didn't go to college. I think I've dropped out of college like 17 times in my lifetime.
Nice.
So started going, then just never really was like that, you know, interested. I always felt like when I was in school that I was more advanced than what they were teaching me.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm learning more doing stuff than I am being in college. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with the institutional college, and I think there's really good students out there, and I think everybody should go to college at some point in their life. But for me personally, it just never really worked. And I just always came from the school of hard knocks, just doing it and applying it, growing, learning from my mistakes, and then advancing.
Well, I actually don't believe that college is it's so archaic, and I think it's more about vocational studies. And I definitely, if I have kids, I wouldn't push college for them. I think information is so democratized now, and you don't have to go through that 4-year institution, which I did, and it was just mainly partying and just figuring out a way to get the grade and figuring out a way to finish it. But going back to what you were saying about being an entrepreneur, that definitely is, I think it's so much of the ability of being with the uncertainty of where the money's going to come from. I think a lot of my friends that, you know, get just regular jobs and work for other people is because they it's almost like they don't have the bandwidth to be okay with, they don't know where the next paycheck, where the paycheck is coming from. And I think to be an entrepreneur, you have to be okay with, you're going to have better months than others.
Yeah.
You're not
always going to win.
You're not always going to win. I mean, there isn't a steady paycheck. So
right.
You have to kind of manage your expectation, and your peace of mind can't come from that steady paycheck because you're
right.
not going to get it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think everyone's built for that. I think the idea of owing money, people just can't even be with that, you know?
It's stressful.
Yeah.
Right? And it creates anxiety for people. Yeah. And I think that being an entrepreneur has changed so much in today's day and age, right? We have so many things at our fingertips that can allow us to earn a living, right? I mean, look at how many TikTok stars there are out there now, right? I mean, they just sit there and they post videos all day. I get, you know, looped into that stuff, and I'm just sitting there, and people are just putting that thing on live, and people are throwing money at them just to cook an egg, right? Yeah. So there is, it has become a little bit easier to become an entrepreneur now. And I think that all of us should at some point have a side hustle that gives us that taste of being a business owner.
Yeah, I think I really, the only way that I've been able to, I mean, I'm pretty much unemployable at this point. I don't think I could ever be employed. And what works for me is definitely having different streams of income, you know, and I've done this my whole life. One of my first entrepreneurial deals was when, you know, I sold acid to my senior class from getting them from my cousin for $10, and I sold them for $20.
Yeah.
And it made me, you know, it was a bit of retail. It was wholesaling. It was a little bit of everything. But I do think that that there's so many ways to make money, and if we kind of dismantle that belief that we're supposed to just get it from one source, everything becomes an opportunity.
And that's the key, you know, having multiple streams of income. And me personally, I took into that during the 2008 real estate crash. I was a mortgage loan officer. I was at the top of my game. I was making obscene amounts of money. just walking into an office every day, picking up the phone and helping people refinance their homes, right? Yeah. I had that invincibility complex that everything I touched was turning into gold, and it was never going to end, and then it did, right?
Yeah. How did it end?
So in 2008, well, actually in 2006, let me step it back a couple years. I was working for a large financial institution. I was managing like 20 loan officers, and I was like, well, I'm doing this for a big corporation when I could be doing this for myself and making way more money. And so I decided to go out and I started my own mortgage company just a couple years before the crash. Didn't see the writing on the wall. I was just gung-ho, feet first. I had a couple of business partners that were also producers for loans, and we just all got this office, and we hooked ourselves into a net branch. We didn't have to have our broker's license or anything of that nature, and we just started writing loans. Well, the key thing with us is we were in the process of going through a real estate change in the marketplace that we weren't aware of, and we put ourselves out there and we did it, but we didn't start it the right way. We just kind of like, okay, we need an office space. We got an office space. We need leads. We put some credit cards out there, and we're like, okay, I got this balance on this one. I got this balance on this one. Let's buy a bunch of leads. And then one thing led to another, and some people saw what the opportunity with us, and they invested in our company. And so we started growing, and then next thing you know, the market crashes. And I went from making, at least $150,000 a year as a self-employed individual to making absolutely nothing. And we had a mortgage, and we had to short sell a house, and I had to close the business, and it all happened like in less than 6 months. It was crazy. It was just, it was like Armageddon. Everybody was just kind of scrambling and running for the hills.
It's so interesting because that crisis is what opened up for me real estate. So
Yeah.
it's interesting how we all had different experiences through that.
And I at that time, I wasn't prepared for any of it, and I almost kind of went into this like dark phase in my life where I was just like, well, I'm never going to be able to get back there, right? But then over time, I started dipping in. So one thing that you'll find out about me is I'm not a quitter. I never quit. I'm relentless. And so I needed to make some money really quickly, and so I started selling light bulbs.
Nice. Well, that was not going to go away.
And I got some quick cash doing that, and then I knew that wasn't going to be sustainable. And so I was like, well, I got to figure out the next thing. And so we started doing loan modifications because, loan modifications, it kind of all tied in together. Yeah. And I helped some friends of mine be really successful in doing loan modifications. And then that kind of dried up because, the regulations started coming in, and, you had to have a certain, legal representation. And if you didn't have that legal representation, then you weren't a legitimate loan modification company. And then, of course, the banks got better at doing loan modifications, so you really didn't need a legal representation for that. So that business kind of dried up. And then from there, I was like, well, I got to do something. And so I went out and I got my insurance license. And I got licensed at State Farm, and I was going to go open up a State Farm agency. And I worked for State Farm for about a year. And another shift happened in my life. One of my best friends from childhood, he was my brother. He passed away at the age of 30. And so that really kind of set me back a little bit, and was like, well, what is this life all really about? I mean, it's so short, right? And so I decided that at that point that I was not going to go drink the red Kool-Aid at State Farm, and I went and opened up an insurance brokerage firm inside a mortgage and real estate office. Go figure, right? Mm-hmm. Mortgage, real estate, insurance, it's a trifecta. And that worked. That was one of the most successful companies that I started, and it ramped up really quickly. The first year we were in business, we sold $350,000 in premium, and I built some amazing relationships through that. and I ended up selling that business. It was kind of like a break-even kind of thing. And then I started working for another insurance company where I got trained on how to be a better business professional. And so the moral to that story is just don't give up. You have to keep going, keep pushing forward, because just because you're doing one thing like mortgage, it doesn't mean that you can't be an insurance agent and a mortgage professional. Doesn't mean that you can't be a real estate professional, mortgage professional, and a insurance professional.
Yeah. So you kept pivoting. Yeah. No, I think that's the key. You know, I've had, you know, a lot of my friends, like everyone kind of makes fun of me, like nobody really knows what I do, and kudos to people that have that one passion, that run with it their whole lives. But to me, I've kind of now just accepted the fact that I'm just a connector, and I make money off any deal, you know. And sometimes you just connect for the sheer joy of the connection, but when there's money to be made, like when I introduce our dealers together, like I have deals with them. When I introduce, obviously I represent photographers and videographers, but anybody that if I meet a hooker, I'm like, hey, if I connected with this guy, I'm taking 20%.
All of a sudden, you become Jorge.
Yeah, I'm like, Jorge's gonna take care of you. But you know what? It works for me, and my goal is not obviously, but for me, I want to get into deals with bigger margins, you know, because then the hustle is less.
Yeah.
And then obviously you and I have we invest in properties together, and I take more of the role of the passive investor, and you're really good at all the details, and you created a great team with I want to say with the girls, but it's not. I mean, they happen to be girls, but you're open to anybody that could be an agent. With finding houses and wholesaling and flipping and stuff. But I definitely feel that my core is, I love the real estate stuff, but I still love my fluidity and still producing photo shoots. And you know, now we're also venturing into this AI company that's going to be a creative hub that I so believe in what this is going to be, because
it's going to be exciting.
It's so incredible. But I think at the core, it's just having a lot of faith in being okay with the uncertainty. I think being an entrepreneur is just, you gotta just not bring the past into the future. Learn from mistakes.
I love that.
But not take that. You know, even today, you know, for those of you that don't know, it's probably the majority of you. I mean, Joe and I have this house in Watts that we're trying to sell, and you know, and decisions were made in the past that were great learning lessons, from the hiring of the contractor to loans, to insurance claims, but it's been a beautiful learning lesson, you know, and we're about to tie it up to the last new contractor. And you know, today Joe called me about, you know, going halves on another financial kind of ticket for the house, and I kind of want to go after your throat, because I was like, I was like,
say it.
Why? No,
it's a podcast. We could curse.
Well, I was like, you kind of pushed me into this house from the beginning. It was an unseen property.
Yeah.
And I said, and it
was a big risk.
It was a big risk, and it reminds me of like how I had those butterflies at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
But then when I hung up the phone, I like that I told you to give me a minute, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the win, that I can actually just take a moment and you know, we do all this work with meditation, which is all about reactiveness, right? And how to shorten the refraction period of reacting. And then I took a step, and I'm like, you know what? This house needed to have happened, and we did the show on HGTV because of this house, and I can't put that on you because I agreed, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm not going to win by feeling like a victim. So I was like, you know what? You've supported my businesses in the past, and even with this AI thing, you know, you're believing in something that I believe in. And I'm like, all right, let's just go halves on this again and hope for the best. So I think it has to do with being if you have the opportunity to be an entrepreneur, it's such a huge way of growing as a human being.
But I think you said it best, right? It was your instincts, right? We as entrepreneurs have to trust in our instincts. At the time when we were, analyzing that property, our instinct was to trust the person that we met to help us with this property, right?
Yeah.
And so we both, went into that and understood that was the risk that we were taking by putting all of our trust into that person.
Yeah, and we won't name who that person is, but it'll be, let's call him contractor number one. But here's a beautiful thing about how we've kind of come full circle about contractor number one.
Right.
Because, everything that happens is perfect in the way that it's supposed to happen, and
everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, and I think the way that we even see what he did, we can see beyond. We don't think this guy's evil.
No.
We don't think he was out to take our money. We just think this is a person that is so overwhelmed with so many other things in life that he can't properly put attention into a project, right? And at the same time, without making that person wrong, it just doesn't work,
right?
And that's why we fired this person 2 days ago, and now we got somebody else to finish the house. And the big win here, Joe, is that we've walked away without feeling victimized or robbed or that we were wrong, because that is everything.
Right. And that could change the whole trajectory of how we continue
to have dynamics.
To have dynamics in our business, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we could literally, it's like a ripped Band-Aid every single time, or an open wound that we keep reopening. We could sit there and repeat that over and over and over again. But we're not doing that.
No.
We're actually pushing forward. We're doubling down, right? Yeah. And it's actually helping us grow our business, our brand, who we're meant to be. And, we say this all the time. It's already done, right?
Yeah.
Our future is planned for us. We just have to navigate ourselves through it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's so key. It's so key to be an entrepreneur. You also have to. There is a level of balance that you need. You can't be too emotional,
right?
Because the other shoe will drop, and there'll be unstableness, and the fact that, when we exited that relationship with this contractor, I said, okay, I'm going to send him a text. And there was no this is someone that you don't want to be on this guy's bad side, right? And what's so great here is that we both know that, and we didn't get reactive, and we said, hey, X, don't bother coming back to the house, because we're not going to, we've hired somebody else, and we wish you the best of luck. You don't want any bad blood with people and that you've worked with.
And as an entrepreneur, we're out there actively networking and going out and meeting new people, but we still tend to run into the same people time and time again.
Yeah.
And we have other business relationships with people who are connected to that contractor one as well. So we don't want to have that affect what they're doing or anything of that nature. So having impact as well on the decisions that we make, right? That plays a big role in how we continue to progress as entrepreneurs. And I think that's another factor of being an entrepreneur. Goes back to pivoting, right? You can't dwell. You have to continue to push forward. You just have to understand what you learned from that encounter and then move forward.
Yeah. And I think definitely what we learned from this encounter, one of the things we learned is and now having worked with other contractors, it's do not, this guy was he was a wordsman with kind of tricking you. We would call to say, hey, this isn't getting done. And he would have the best reasoning why it's not getting done and how it would be fixed. And almost like he would put you under a spell.
Yes.
And then you'd be like, okay, yeah, you're right.
I shouldn't be upset about this.
I shouldn't be upset about it. You're making it work. But at the end, it was like, no, wait, it's been 2 weeks and you haven't delivered the product.
Done. Yeah.
So, it took what it took. I think the biggest lesson here for us has been to just recognize these kind of red flags from an earlier beginning.
Yes.
And so then we don't have to, kind of go through the gamut that we went through in this one.
Yes.
And I think that we definitely learned that lesson.
If it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I think that's another key factor.
Yeah. Because at the beginning, he came promising the moon and stars, that it was going to be so much
quick
cheaper.
response time.
And I think that's why we went for it. And we even had our mentor telling us, you're crazy. This is not going to cost you $60,000. This is going to be $120,000. And at the end, it ended up being even more than that. Yeah. But, everything is a lesson.
It's all a lesson.
And luckily, a lot of things can be written off for taxes but again, this taught us to be with uncertainty and with frustration and with deception, but not internalize it. And not give us
don't just throw your hands up in the air and start to internalize it and say, oh, woe is me. It's what can I learn from this and how can I grow from this, right? And I think that's crucial to being an entrepreneur is understanding that every single move that you make, every single message that you send, every bit of feedback that you get is all a part of the process. Yeah. And to continue to grow and to continue to use that to help you keep pushing forward.
Yeah, I think, and I so appreciate some people that just don't think or don't feel that they have it in them to be entrepreneurs.
It's scary.
It's a little scary. It's a little scary when it's a new thing.
Yep.
But like I said, I think because of our upbringing, we were always kind of had to fend for ourselves. And I think people that are exposed to so much independence from the very beginning tend to flow into entrepreneurship a bit easier, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And I think that that's true is as you become more into your feathers, right? As you grow more into your feathers, you're going to find that there's so many miraculous things that you can do without actually knowing that you can do them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the fear of the unknown. Yeah. Right? People when people are hesitant in doing something, it's a fear base, right? And so we want to make sure that we're going to not lose money, or we're not going to fail, or we're not going to be able to pay the bills, or things of that nature, right? That's just the natural human response. Maybe I'm a sociopath because I don't have that fear, but I truly believe that I'm meant for greatness, and that's what helps me drive every single day.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think that level of comfort in the unknown is just it's partly due because of practice and faith. You know, just knowing that that it's all going to work out, and actually contemplating that the unknown. You know, we've all had great lives, but I don't want to keep repeating my results. No. So why not keep taking chances and maybe some won't be like a huge hit, but or might be a bit of a bust, but maybe there's that one that's going to be that huge, deal or opportunity that comes along the way. So I think that everyone out there, and this is so much of a deeper conversation about how we're raised by consumers and not really investors. We're taught to like save, right. Go to school, work for a corporation your whole lives. And, we're at the cusp of a technological boom. I believe, I know you believe too, with AI. And I think that if we're not thinking of how we can, be self-sufficient entrepreneurs, some people are going to really struggle with how life and business is going to change for sure.
Absolutely. It could pass you by really quickly, right? Yeah. And if you do not take that risk or take that chance, you might be in a situation where everything moves past you and you stay stagnant and stay right where you're at. So
all right, Joe. Well, that was pretty good.
That was a good one.
I hope people take some of these nuggets of taking chances in entrepreneurship and Thank you so much for being with us, and can't wait till we hang on the next one.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this is exactly what we're here to do, is to help you understand how being an entrepreneur, or how just doing anything that you're in fear of, will help you grow. Just keep pushing forward. And if you like what you heard here today, give us a like or subscribe to our channels. We're going to be putting this out on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, TikTok, all of it, right? So we're going to
create our own.
we're going to create our own through AI.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
All right.